Heroes for Humanity is an organization you need to know about. It was started by veteran special operators, and they go anywhere and everywhere in the world rescuing people. They were part of rescuing people out of Afghanistan, taking care of people in Ukraine. There's really some amazing stories you've got to hear. And we have the founder of Heroes for Humanity with us today, a gentleman named Dennis Price. He was a Marine for many years, sniper, special operator, a lot of exciting stories. You're going to meet him when we come back. Before we get in on our conversation with Dennis, there's a short video we want to play that kind of will give you a concise background of what got him to where he is today. So let's roll that.
My name is Dennis Price. I served about 17 years in the Marine Corps, 15 years active duty, Force Recon, Scout Sniper, Ranger, JSOC. I say all this because at one point in my life, it meant so much to me, those titles. Probably the greatest title I ever had was being a father. I joined the Marine Corps about 17 years old. About 16 years ago in Iraq, I was a machine gunner. We were doing a convoy operation from Fallujah to Ramadi, just like we did hundreds of times before. We were coming up through the city of Ramadi, and we were coming up under an underpass through a bridge. Once you go under the bridge, you switch lanes. The first vehicle goes, they do exactly what they're supposed to do. The next vehicle goes, he ran over a IED, and it kicked off what changed my life for the worst. The vehicle in front of me gets decimated, a rocket flies in between me and the vehicle, and then it kicks off this IED initiated ambush. To my left, to the southeast of the city of Ramadi, we started getting shot at, and all we could see was muzzle blast through the city. After watching that moment of my buds just getting destroyed, I was so mad, I was so angry. I wanted to kill every single person there that day. We were trapped on the X for what seemed to be eternity. From there, I struggled through life and walked through life. I feel like I couldn't feel anything but bitter hate, rage. I had two modes. I was either pissed off or super pissed off. And I let that fire within me consume my life. I started trying to replace that hole inside me in my spirit with anything that I could fill it with. At the time, it was like since I pushed out God from my life, he was always there. I just thought he had no place in war. Whenever I came back, I would try to get back into religion, back in the church, and it worked for a little bit. I did 7 back-to-back deployments in the Marine Corps, and then I did 6 more in the private military contracting world. I was chasing the high, trying to fulfill what that void left in my soul. I slowly allowed God back into my life. And then I always went back each deployment to pushing him back out. My youngest daughter, she was born with 2 rare diseases, Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, BWS. I thought my life was over. I thought the world was crashing down on my shoulders. When I got handed that $1.2 million bill from Amelia's Medical, that was my solution. It was that my family will get $400,000 or $500,000. This was my answer. Like, this was my fault. My family would be better off without me. I eventually let the devil into my head so much that there was no other logical thought in my head. He convinced me, and there was not a solid reason past that to take my own life. At this point, I was in my basement working out and biking for like an hour. I eventually picked up the phone after a couple hours, and I called one of my close buds and friends. In my head, I was like, this is not a false promise. Like, I can't think of one solid reason not to blow my brains out right now. Maybe he can give me one reason. He didn't pick up. I called again. He was out traveling. All else was white noise. I couldn't think of a single reason not to do it. Hour 3 or 4 goes by, and I'm still staring at the gun. One last thought goes through my head, and it's a random statistic I read, and says, if a parent commits suicide, your children then are 10 times more likely to then commit suicide. And I'm sitting there like, wow, I can't believe that's what just randomly popped in my head. So as all these statistics are racing through my head and I have the gun in my hand, I'm like, man, I cannot fake it. I can't hack it one more day to give my kids a better life. I can't even do that one last time. I put the gun down and I go in and I put on Cornerstone TV, which is a church channel, and I'm like, man, I'm so messed up right now. I need help. I go seek help through counseling and everything, and go back to what I know. You know, just like everyone's baseline, just like zeroing a sniper rifle or anything like that. I needed zeroed in life. I had to go back to a baseline, and what is that baseline? It's Christianity. It's the church. I don't care if I have to work every hour of my life. I will pay off this $1.2 million debt. I will figure out a way to do it and give my family the father they deserve. I got out and joined, what used to be called Blackwater, and I started government contracting through different contracts, OGA ones to just various different ones. I was walking down the hallways, and all of a sudden, it felt like I got struck by lightning. And that is the best way I always try to describe it. Every hair on my body was standing up. And that's the first and only time I ever heard the audible voice of God. And he says, you have to go save them. I was like, what? What's going on? And I go down the hall, and I turn on the TV, and I see Afghanistan, Kabul, all about to fall. And this is before it fell. My rebuttal was, what can I do? And the next response was, anything. Within one day, I had a family who had 6 children. I got given a family, I got given a mission, I got given a timeline saying in 6 days, their oldest daughter, who's 14, and their youngest, and their second daughter, who's 11, are gonna be raped and sold off to the Taliban. And with God's power and everything like that, within 24 hours, I owned a 50-acre compound in Alaska. 24 hours after that, I had a 6-man joint special operations team. 24 hours after that, I had a plane, and I had access to go in Afghanistan. On the 5th day, we rescued his family out of Afghanistan. That changed my life. From that moment, immediately rescuing them, I got shifted all of these missions. In 2 weeks, I was able to save 55 Americans out of Afghanistan. What now is formed as Save Our Allies. I got invited for that, and then that's when I met Chad Robichaux, and he heard what I was doing and what I did, and he offered me to go on a 2-man unsupported operation to cross into Afghanistan and save remainder Americans and provide routes out of Afghanistan. I said, well, this is God's calling. 2 weeks later, we went to Afghanistan, we went to Tajikistan, and we eventually was able to save, about 82 American and vetted interpreters out of Afghanistan. I say that all because this is not my story to tell, this is God's story. He used me, a broken man, used my life skill when I convinced myself years ago that I was here as God's war vessel. It was just that slight shift from going from taking lives to saving lives. It changed my life. I now dedicate my life to serving God, serving the Lord, and using my skill set to helping others. I go around and help other veterans. I help them deal with the same exact things I am. And I go around the world and just try to help people out, because that's ultimately what we're here for.
Well, Dennis, that was quite a story, but in that video you talked about rescuing 50, 80 Americans out of that. But weren't you part of an organization that rescued more like 15,000 people?
Yeah, so Save Our Allies, they rescued about 15,000 people from the fall of Kabul, Afghanistan, and I'm only responsible for 77. So I think in the video or in Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler, it's something actually really sad to say, and I don't like to say it a lot. It says like 84. That last family didn't make it.
Oh, wow.
They passed, and that's just what it was. It was just a wartime.
Were you there when, like on the news, we were seeing these airplanes going down the runway with people hanging on the planes? Were you there then?
At that point?
Yeah.
No, I was, when all that happened, I was doing ITG, initial terminal guidance, and working, on the ground things to get people up to that area. And then that's when I went in from after that crap show unfolded. And the ones who we all left behind after that, that's when I realized, hey, there's still more people. And that's when Chad Robichaux came up to me, and he's like, hey, there's still more out there. Would you like to go on a 2-man behind enemy lines mission to pull out the rest? And I was like, I don't know who you are, but if there is more out there, this is what God called me to do. And yes, I'll go.
And Chad is a pretty well-known fella. He's got a podcast, and he was a Marine Recon as well, right?
Yeah, Chad did. I don't remember how many years in Force Recon, and then went over as a DoD contractor in an AFO program with DevGru, and then did 8 deployments with as a contractor with as an AFO in Afghanistan, and that's where Aziz came, and that's when the book Saving Aziz that. This depicts the whole story that you saw that I'm in.
And Chad wrote that book.
Yeah, Chad. Yeah, Saving Aziz. Really good book on Amazon. You should buy it.
But now, what's interesting, though, you told me a story where you and Chad actually braved through icy waters with terrorist snipers all around, Chinese, Russian.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So we snuck in from Tajikistan, and then we went to the border of Afghanistan, the Panjshir River Valley. That's where we did a 90-mile route recon behind enemy lines, and that was where we were encountered with anywhere from Tajikistan armed guards to Russian tanks and armed vehicles protecting their border, because that was the last Soviet bloc country, and then eventually as you go closer to the Chinese border, that's where the Chinese militants were there. There's intel reports saying that there was a Russian KGB, or what they used to be called KGB, snipers in the mountains, and they were all protecting that for people coming in across to stop them.
How long did it take you to do that 90-mile trek?
I think it was 10 or 11 days, something like that.
Did you ever get seen?
Yeah. I almost got captured. That's where that I don't want to say congresswoman, I think Vicky Hartzler, that's where she does that congressional record and announces that, me and Chad's operation, and to go and save others when we didn't have to. And she brings up, I was just like probably almost me to you, maybe like one more step back from a Chinese militant hiding in the bushes, covering concealed. It was nighttime, and he was going in for a capture, and that's when Chad saved my life, and that's why he's the godfather.
How did he save your life?
He suggested I went in the vehicle by immediately when he saw the Chinese militant going in for the capture. Like I said,
were you the capture?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was kind of like doing a point man thing where in the military, a point man, the first guy up front who's doing the navigation, he kind of is worried about the path, immediate, like what we call 5s and 25s. Where is this at? Where's it going immediately? Looking for landmines, bombs, IEDs, and then choosing a path down to the river so we can find if it's suitable for us to swim across and cross it to save lives, and save the Americans and vet interpreters who we left behind. So this is one of the points we saw. We saw that, hey, the river, the Panjshir River Valley was widening. It was slowing down from like class 5 rapids, and it looks like it might be shallow enough to cross at least chest high. So so I went down by the riverside, and as I was going down, Chad grabs me by the back of the neck and grabs me and throws me back in the vehicle. And as like in slow motion, as I look up and the bush that was right there, I saw the guy going in like this. And like as slow motion, I go in the vehicle and he's like, go. And we go in and I drive by. I look in that big, massive bush. Like I said, it was nighttime without night vision goggles, MVGs. I saw it drive by, and it was a Chinese tank that was covered and concealed with bushes all around it, kind of like how World War II is, how they disguise it. And that's when I saw it in like slow motion driving by, and I was like, oh my God. And I was just beating myself up for like next, I don't know how long in the drive. And I was like, dude, I can't believe this. He's like, hey, that's what I'm here for. You worry about the immediate front. I watch your back, and I look at the outward, and we're doing 2-man security. And so he, like I said, that's when he saved my life.
Did they shoot at you?
No, because they're going to, like, think about it this way. If someone was doing something like that, do you gain more out of killing them and that's it, or capturing them and whatever, interrogate? So, like, I always say, man, he saved my life. It was not for, Chad saving my life, I would not be sitting here today. I would probably be still, I'd be dead or worse off in, a Chinese torture camp, still. So now.
But why didn't they shoot at you?
Well, I don't know. Like I have no clue. So
Did they chase after you when y'all got out of there?
No, I like, so how it all happened, like they were probably just curious because there was no, remember that this is on the border, so there was no Americans there. It's just like, who are these guys? And
Oh, because you weren't, that's right, you weren't in military uniforms.
No. I was dressed, well, not like how I am, but I was dressed like what like the local populace is, and so there was no Americans like ever in that area in the Panther River Valley. So they're just like, and like I said, nighttime, a car just stops, two guys get out, and they're like, who's this guy? Like,
So you're not in active duty at the time?
no.
Okay, so you guys voluntarily went over there.
Mm-hmm.
No one sent you. A handful of you guys?
No, two. Me and Chad.
Two guys went. Where would you guys ever come up with the idea that two of you could go over there and rescue these people?
Is
that just military training that I'm just clueless about?
well, yes and no. In Force Recon or in Special Operations, you work in a small 6 to 8 man team. In Scout Sniper, you work in a 2-man team. And as a singleton operator, I get dropped off into a country or with maybe 2, possibly 3 other people total. So me and maybe 2 other people, and we go and do things. So it was easier to do this way than have a platoon of guys. Now it's like, who are these guys convoying, whatever. But no, there was no any of that stuff. It was, I truly, just like you saw in the video, I truly felt called by God to go and rescue these people, and do something about it. I didn't want to be the guy sitting on the news, watching the news, being like, man, we should have done this, we should have done that. So, just like it says in Scripture that many are called, but few are chosen. I truly felt the audible voice and heard the audible voice of God saying, you have to save them. I had no context, I had no clue, and that's when I turned on the news, saw Kabul, Afghanistan about to fall, and it was like, well, what can I do? What do I do? And it's like, next words were anything.
Well, did you go in and then come back and go again?
No, I had teams on the ground. I was working while I was back at home, and I was working in ITGing, initial terminal guidance, and I was maneuvering people on the ground.
And that's when Chad said, "Do you want to go with me?"
Yeah, and that's when I met him. I didn't know who he was before, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to. I don't know who you are, but if there's still more people who need help, then my job's not done, and yes, I'll go with you." And like on the airport when we were about to go, I was like, let me Google this guy real quick. Like, who is this guy? Like, I'm about to go with, and because I do singleton operations and I used to work as a private contractor, we used to be called Blackwater as a sniper. I guarded people all the time, like people in the State Department or people in like official capacities, whatever. And they were like, did some time in college and now a civilian in Iraq. So I had no problem with as long as this guy, whoever he was, not knowing who he was, it was like, if he just listens to us, we'll get out alive, and I felt really comfortable about like, we'll get out, and I did my due diligence of map recon, looking at the area, having fail-safe plans, E&E plans, escape and evade plans, exit routes, primary routes, alternate routes, and contingencies all up and down the line. So
you decided to take off, put your life on the line with a guy that you didn't really even know much about.
If you say it like that. So yeah, I mean, well, we say that we believe in God. We say that we have faith. So if God calls you, do you say yes if these things go like that? And it's like, when Moses got called from God to go save the people and free the slaves in Egypt, did he say, well, let me get a team of whatever? He's like, and actually Moses first initiated and said, you must mean my brother Aaron. You must mean him. God chose Moses to go and do it, to glorify God to going and do so, which he did so in obedience, and kicked a few stones on the way. But ultimately, we're able to lead the slaves out of Egypt. So we see this all throughout the Bible, and the reason why I bring this up is because, if you say it without faith, if you say it in us sitting here with coffee and nice little chairs in a sunny, awesome day in the freest state in the U.S. of Texas, it sounds ridiculous, but it's not. It's the same story as tale as old as time. Is that many are called to do amazing acts in the name of the Lord. And are you willing to pick up the phone and answer when he calls you?
Well, now, Dennis, you've got a wife and 4 small children, right?
Yeah.
So when he said, you want to go, did it go through your mind, this is going to be really dangerous, I could leave my children without a dad? All those, did that go through your mind?
I did. Now, in retrospect, if I was in the same boat, who would come for us? There's a really good saying, and I think it was a famous letter in World War II Nazi Germany, and it says, now this is going to sound politically incorrect right now, but yeah, time period. So it said, at first they came for the mentally ill and the sick and handicapped. Well, I was not mentally ill, sick, or handicapped, so I didn't say anything, and they took them away. And then they came for the minorities, they came for the Jews, and they came for the unbelievers. And I was not any of those, so then they took them away. Then they came for the elderly, then they came for the defiants and the rebels. And I was not defiant, I was not a rebel, and I was not elderly, so they took them away. But when they came to take me, there was no one else to stand. At what point do we sit back and keep watching this world and always MFing the TV or scrolling through social media and complaining that we live in a horrible world, but we're not doing anything about it? Regardless of the situation, because ultimately wars are not fought by childless men. We all have kids in the military, but for some reason, the enemy, our adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion, seeking to whom he may devour. He gets inside your head in spiritual warfare and convinces you that none of that is your business. You should focus on this. Well, you should focus on your family. You should focus, and I agree, we should focus on our family. However, if it takes a village to raise a family, and we're so worried about our internal house, that is why our world is so messed up, because we're not stepping out in faith, doing the right thing, being ambassadors on earth as it is in heaven, and showing, because faith without actions is dead. What are we doing to make this better, the world a better place? And not just like going out and freelancing. If you are called and you feel that is this a good idea or is this a God idea? And I had that's when I heard the audible voice of God, and I had all mission clearance from the authority of God hearing that. And I say that because if you look at the fruits that we sowed, now that's why I love this testimony, is because it truly backs. Hey, this wasn't just some crazy guy who heard some voices. Like, no, there's
how when you heard the voice, how long was it before you actually took this trip to Afghanistan?
Oh man, maybe 2 weeks. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that must, when you heard the audible voice of God, did it shake you?
Oh yeah, like you said in the testimony, I felt it felt like I got struck by lightning. That's why the best way I describe it. It felt like I got struck by lightning. Every fiber in my being, every hair on my body was standing straight up, and that's when I heard, "You have to save them." And I was like,
so within
no
2 weeks,
context.
that's why
within 2
it
weeks,
was
I was
easier for you to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think you would have gone if you had not heard that audible voice of God?
No, because I was about to go to. I was actually going to Afghan already, but on a contract with, like I said, with a contracting group that used to be called Blackwater. I was supposed to go there, but then it was closing up. Then I was going to Iraq then afterwards, which I did. So was it like 6 days after we got back from Afghan? They called and they're like, "Your time's up. You're going to Iraq." And I'm like, okay, which I felt safer there at the time. Then
how long have you served?
18 years in special operations.
So how come you retired? Or did you retire?
No, I left active duty at 15 years, and just like I said in the testimony of, is my youngest daughter was born with 2 rare diseases, and it forced me to get out because she only could live in 2 locations in the United States to receive her special medical care. One was the Children's Hospital Philadelphia, which right when I got out, we moved to, and that was number 1 in the U.S. Number 2 in the U.S. was Children's Hospital outside of Houston. And I was like, well, I don't know anyone in Texas, so I'll go to CHOP, Children's Hospital Philadelphia. And that's when I started working for Blackwater, and that's when at that company, and that's when all this happened. And then after the Afghan evac, Chad called me up and was like, "Hey man, well first Ukraine happened and that whole thing. Then I stood up Heroes for Many, my nonprofit, and we did that whole tour. And then Chad called me and was like, "Hey, man, there's a lot of talkers and there's a lot of doers. There's very few doers." He's like, "You're a doer." Everyone said, "Hey, how can we help?" And then when it came time to this, you fully stood up and are over in Ukraine in the invasion, you know, and he's like, I want you to help me stand up Mighty Oaks International and grow it. And
Mighty Oaks is his nonprofit.
Yep, yeah, and Mighty Oaks is his nonprofit.
And what do they do?
They preach spiritual resiliency to veterans and first responders of PTSD and suicide by doing it through a biblical counseling. Okay. So
you joined that organization?
Yeah, I joined that one. I pretty much put a pause and shelved Heroes for Many at the time, passed it down to people I trust who would keep it in the left and right lateral limits.
Now wait, you're getting ahead because you haven't mentioned Heroes for Humanity yet.
Okay, yeah. So when Ukraine kicked off, so Afghan ends, and I get called to go over as a contractor with formerly known as Blackwater as a sniper in Baghdad. So I'm over there, and everyone's always approaching me. They're like, man, what do you got going next? What do you got going next? Are you doing anything else? And I'm like, because I heard about the Afghan evac, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that's like, I would like to say that's it, but I feel like God has something else out there for me. I don't know what it is, but I can't tell you. But I have this feeling there's something else that's about to happen, and But I was like, I'll just take it to prayer. Like 9 months or 12 months later, Ukraine kicks off in the invasion. And that's when I fully stood up my organization from a for-profit Polaris Group International. I fully stood up and made it into the nonprofit when I found out. And there's a long story behind that one. But I during the invasion in Ukraine to go and help the widows and the orphans, just like it says in James 1:27, because at the time when Ukraine got invaded, there was a whole bunch of women and children being persecuted and whatever, and they were flocking west, and they just needed rescued out while just cities were getting leveled. And I was like, well, and a lot of people called me when it was first about to happen, and when it was first happening, they're like, hey, are you going to do anything? I was like, dude, I don't feel it like I did in Afghan. And I was like, I'm just taking it to God. And if he feels that I should do something, then I'll do something. But it's not like it was in Afghan where I felt that audible voice. So I took it to prayer. I kept meditating on it. And then, loose through like third party and whatever, there was a mission that came down from President Zelensky, and there was 3,600 special needs orphans who needed rescued from the eastern part of Ukraine out in the to the western part and to Poland. And I was like, boom, there it is. My daughter's special needs. And I was like, that was all, that it took. And it grasped my heartstrings and was like, man, God equipped me with his experience of 18 years in special operations. He equipped me with the experience of rescue operations in Afghanistan. But this is a whole new battlefield. This wasn't just the fall of Kabul, Afghanistan, people living in the desert and mountains, whatever, semi ill-equipped. This was, a near peer adversary, but we know that in Philippians it says that I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. So I saw it tried and true, that the Afghan evac was a modern day miracle. It was God's miracle, and I was just so happy to be a part of it. Wow. So I had that true, undaunted faith that the Lord was with us. And like I said, just like it says in Philippians, to multiple times throughout the Bible, that you can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. If I kept that undaunted faith, God will be with us. And then if I perished in that way, then that was, God knows us. He knows the amount of hairs on your head before you're born. He knows our hearts. He weighs our minds, and he judges us by the fruits that we bear. So if I was to die in Ukraine, saving women and children, James 1:27, what it says is, the religion that our Father calls is pure and faultless. Pure and faultless is to look after the widows and the orphans in their time of distress, and not to succumb to the evils of this world. Man, what better mission than, and God has equipped you with, and you say you live with Christ, you say you live with faith, and then you see women and children being persecuted, and you have this massive skill set, and you've been tried and true, and you say you live with Christ, and you say you dedicate your life to Christ, and now you feel called to do something. Only because the lies the enemy tells us in our head is why we don't do anything. And we know in Scripture it says that wherever my foot steps in the name of the Lord will be his. So we geared up. I started a nonprofit, Heroes for Humanity, and we did it in the name of the Lord. We're like, boom, that is our secret weapon, is through Christ. And all throughout Scripture, from Gideon to King David to Moses to numerous scriptures in the Bible, we know that is our secret weapon. So we went over there. We sent a doctor, nurse, paramedic, 18 Delta Special Forces medic veteran, and 3-man Special Operations veteran team, and we embedded it in the invasion of Ukraine in an orphanage and provided medical aid and assistance and rescue operations in Ukraine during the invasion. And it was just such an amazing thing and an awesome testimony because how much would you think something like that would cost? Tens of thousands, if not like 100,000 to do, is $3,600. That's what we did it off of, And
did you get all of those special needs kids out?
By that time, the mission went to someone else, and because I was at the time I was trying to stand up the organization, I had to raise funds. So how I rose funds is I sold T-shirts. I sold my plasma twice a week for months. And prior to stand this thing up, because I saw Ukraine was about to fall and wanted to do something, and then was only able to raise. I was trying to raise like 60,000 or something like that But I love this testimony because I was only able to raise $3,600, and we did it on $3,600 for 3 weeks.
That's when you went in and took care of the people medically.
Yeah, that's when we embedded a doctor, nurse, paramedic, 18 Delta Special Forces medic veteran, and a 3-man special operations team to include flights, safe houses, food, equipment, car rentals, all of that for $3,600. And I love that story because it's truly it's not words I'm just saying, that truly with the will of God, and God's, there's a good saying I like to say a lot, that I say in almost all the podcasts is, if it's God's will, then it's God's bill. If it truly is the will of God, he'll find a way to pay for it. And $3,600, if this was Tim Kennedy and he just rose $1 million and he went over there and did, they're like, yeah, that's Tim. He had money, he had the experience, he did it. But who gets the glory in that? Instead, $3,600, just like the story of Gideon, send them away. That's still too much. $100,000 was still too much. $50,000 is still too much to glorify God. $3,600, and just like it says in Scripture, with just the faith the size of a mustard seed can move the mountains. So if just the faith is at least the size of a mustard seed can move mountains, and Jesus broke the bread to feed the multitude until they were full, the multitude of the bread and the few loaves and fish of $3,600 was able to complete 3 weeks of that mission and save and rescue and treat and just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of kids off of the widow's mite. And man,
so tell me, how is your wife in all this? Is she all about you going and doing this?
So after the Afghan evac and then moving to the Ukraine thing, she was seasoned. So remember, when I did 18 years in special operations, she was with me almost the whole time. So I think we met on about to go on my third deployment, and we got married before that, and she did 7 deployments with me in the Marine Corps and 6 more outside the Marine Corps. So my kids, everything, they knew, they were seasoned, that Dad's always gone training in the military and Daddy's always deployed, so when it came time to do this, there was no difference from that, of leaving, doing things similar to it, but now doing it unsupported, not in uniform, not whatever, but doing it instead of for the government and for the military, you're doing it for Christ. So that was a big struggle. And and as we walk it out now, she sees the miracles, that God is doing in us and through us. So she understands it all. Obviously, it doesn't take any burden of stress off her life. She's still, but I would say it's an additional factor that played, that took a toll on our marriage, that took a stress thing in my life and whatever. But, And that plays into part of spiritual warfare too, because, the enemy who does not want you to go out and tell these testimonies, what we just did, how much good has the enemy stopped by implanting an idea that you should not go? Think of all the good that could have been,
Right. Well, now tell me, in your testimony, you talked about how you were suicidal, you were angry and more angry. So I imagine that was pretty rough on your home life as well.
Yeah. So, in the military, during the time I was in, the 2 wars were kicking hardcore, and you're pumping in and out of deployments left and right. And when you're back, you were constantly over at a special operations school or something. So you're gone even when you're home. Just left and right. And then during that time, the fad and young age, everyone was drinking at the time, to not fully decompressing, and PTSD at the time was not really a thing, and it was, but like it was ostracized and still like misunderstood. So in my testimony and what I tell, and I go out and evangelize and help veterans, I say, what we do, our family has bore the majority of the front of the burden of us. And I openly say that because veterans, you hear all the time that they the high suicide rate and whatever, and depression, whatever, but like, man, the toll it takes on your family to even go through until that point, and you're burning every bridge. Like I always said, like I was in my testimony, I was hurting everyone I loved around me, and I was burning them all to the ground, and it was horrible. And now, fast forward, when I lived in the flesh, when I lived for myself, when I lived, even if I was doing stuff for myself, for my family to pay the bill or whatever, I was living in discontent, anger, bitterness, rage, and I was trying to, like the Samaritan woman says, I was trying to fill a void in my soul with anything of this earth that I could to feel whole again. And ultimately only through that eternal water that Christ talks about, to the Samaritan woman was I able to ever to be full. So now, fast forward when it did weigh horrible thing in my family, fast forward 3+ years, because it's only been 3 years. Like,
really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. And you've been married how long?
About to hit our 12-year anniversary.
So she stuck with you for 9 years of most of that you were angry and.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you got a good woman.
I have the best woman. No offense, but no, there's a really wise saying, and I misquote and give too much credit to FDR. I don't know if he said it or not, but there's a really good saying, and it says, "Behind every successful man is an even stronger, supportive wife or woman." And that's the most truest statement. I would not be able to do any of this stuff without her. She's my rock. She's my stone. She takes care of my family when I'm gone. She is there with me through all of this. And and it's it's not always sunshines and rainbows. There's a lot of ugly stuff, but she stuck it out through the whole time.
That's awesome.
And now we're reaping the benefits of my
did
service.
she find Christ when you did, or recommit at the same time you did?
So she's always been a believer, just like how I was. We were American Christians, 2 separate things. We were American Christians. We went to church every Sunday of our lives.
Sunday church.
Yeah.
Sunday Christians.
Yeah, hitting the big 4, the big seasons, going to church. Yeah. Ominous Dominus, go back on our way. We're out of the church parking lot. We're honking our horns and MFing people because they're cutting us off.
Right.
The American Christian. So, and as she was watching what was happening, and this is something we kind of still struggle with now. I had a conversation with her relatively recent, and I'm learning from my mentors who were, I don't want to say any names, but who were about 20 years older than me, who lived in the same life and found Christ later. I was healed, but all the damaged people around me and my loved ones, I found Christ and I was healed, and I had internal salvation. I had internal peace and nirvana, constantly walking around a state of like internal peace, but my family was not. and my wife was struggling, and even though she went to church, even though she whatever, it was hard for her to get over that. And an amazing book, and I I can't even encourage it enough. Outside the Bible is there's an amazing audiobook I highly suggest people to read. I read it once a year now because it's called Total Forgiveness.
Total Forgiveness?
Total Forgiveness. Man, I actually was just listening to it again this past week. It's my number one book after the Bible and after How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Total Forgiveness is tied to that. I try to read both of them every year again, or at least audiobook Total Forgiveness, and it's just it's like reading poetry. Every paragraph you're like, oh, I gotta pause and just. One time I was riding, I think from Texas to Louisiana or Mobile, Alabama, for a reserve gig, and like 16-hour drive. I had to pull over to the side. I was like, oh man, like what he just said, like the Holy Spirit got me clenched up, and I was like, dude, that was so dense. I just gotta decompress of what the magnitude of those words,
This is probably a crazy question, but I'm a female that was never in the military. What's the biggest cause of PTSD for military guys, or is there an answer to that?
Whatever I would say, it would be biased, because I would say experiences may vary.
Yeah.
So,
What about for you? What was the hardest part?
it's hard to answer now because like I'm in a different headspace. I'm in a different life. It's hard because when you first join and you first go, like I did like 18 years ago when I was in Iraq as a machine gunner and watching my friends get blown up and experiencing that right off at like 18 years old. Yeah. Similar to what it says in the Bible, with death to oneself, and but I died that day. I say all the time, DJ Price from small town Pennsylvania, a town of 1,000 people, died that day, and
so there's no amount of training that prepares you.
It does, like it does to do the job, but there's no really amount of training to bring you back.
I got you.
No, to bring you back, because like I said, that guy died. There's no resuscitation of the happy-go-lucky DJ Price who grew up, always smiling, joking, and being a class clown. Yeah, I still joke around a lot, but like that guy he's been dead for 18 years now, and then as I continued down that path, it wasn't just one tour, it wasn't 4 years, it was like 15 years active duty, back to back to back, and just like forging steel, I had to be scolded in fire. Beaten, folded through the trials and tribulations of life and combat and deployments and life's everything like that, and trying to figure it out and re-beaten and beaten.
So the military doesn't help you cope with all of that?
At the time, like I said, today's society, it's a lot different because now PTSD and mental health is like I say over advertised because I came up in a world where if you said you had these problems, it'd be like, it's very toxic masculinity style.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, or other words. And it's like, drink it off, you sissy, or, and that's how we coped, was through heavy alcohol abuse. And I say that now, and through fighting, and through, temptations of the flesh. So we are filling that void that we've been missing. Like I said about the spiritual.
Tell me, one of my favorite charities, of course, is veterans. I mean, I love military. I love veterans. My son-in-law's one. And what is it we can do to support veterans? What's the greatest need for regular folks like me to support veterans? What can we do?
So that's kind of a loaded question because I'm biased. There's multiple things. I said it's a loaded question. So first, everyone's like, "Oh, what can you do?" Dude, there's millions and millions of dollars of nonprofits. There's millions of dollars of grants. There's $1 million of whatever, placebos to medications to see psychiatrists to find whatever. And man, it's ultimately as I worked for Mighty Oaks organization, I watched these veterans go up about PTSD and suicidal and everything like that. And as we're doing biblical counseling, I found the most mind-blowing, unique thing. And it was that combat was the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was a life of pain and torment and abuse well before the military. The straw that broke the camel's back was combat, and that was the socially acceptable thing. I can wear a hat, say disgruntled veteran. I can walk around and justify my actions ignorantly amongst everyone else and say, oh, it's because I went to I was in the military. And most of those guys, especially nowadays, have never deployed. But why are they still struggling with anxiety, PTSD, anger, rage, all this other stuff?
Because they've never dealt with the brokenness before they came in.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
And it was baffling to me. And as not a newer believer, but as a newly submitted person to Christ, that's why I'm so strong in telling you, like, and I had a conversation with a guy today, this morning when I dropped my kids off to school. I got a call from a guy who's exiting the military, and he's trying to scratch this itch that he cannot scratch. And he's like, I want to go contracting. Can you help me hook you up? I'm like, dude, I can, but I'll let you know that you're gonna thirst again. And I keep bringing up the Samaritan's woman because it hits the nail on the head, and it's something that we constantly struggle with. And even though I can tell you and preach you this, you'll go and 5-10 years later you'll forget and you'll thirst again. Because you take your eyes off the Lord. And that's the only thing I found that truly will make you not thirst again, is that eternal water of Christ.
Did he hear you?
He did, yeah. And he and not just him, but a whole bunch of other people. And we're working together. It's not something I could say once and you're like, okay, So I'm discipling that guy now. I take a lot of people like that because it's a mentorship, it's a discipleship, and I love doing it because I just I did not ask for, like, I did not envision growing up and running a ministry for Heroes for Humanity. I did not imagine preaching the word of God, evangelizing, and doing this. Even like 5 years ago, if you'd be like, would you up there, go on a podcast and going and preaching the word, all the, I'd be like, no, not at all. But this is the flock that God gave me, and my net that I keep casting keeps reining in, specifically veteran special operators. I would I joke around. I actually say I would rather have, like, I thought it would be like civilians and I could be up there like preaching the gospel, but like God's like, no, you're going to get equally hard-headed, stubborn people like you. And oh, by the way, you're not going to have a church. You're going to be carrying them up and down the mountains, wow. Physical mountains in North Carolina, from the hurricanes to Afghanistan, Kabul to Ukraine. You're going to be alongside these guys who are equally as hard-headed. And I'm like, dang it.
A couple of times you've mentioned about weakening masculinity, in this country, and you're dealing with the military, which is, let's just say, high testosterone, right? I don't know if are they wimping? Are they wimping down the military? Like,
that's why I snuck in the was high testosterone.
Wow, what are they doing now?
There's something in the water.
How are they doing that?
Okay. So first, it's attacking the enemy. And I say that because it's not the straw that broke the camel's back. Did those guys, were they raised without a father? Mm-hmm. Did the nuclear family get broken up well before that? Did society pave a way to slowly pull the importance of a male figure out of their life? Are they watching TV that makes a bumbling 90s sitcom dad as the center point of a joke and a bumbling fool? Yeah. Did they take that out of it? Did they incentivize not bringing marriage together? Did the enemy convince us that marriage is only a tax write-off? It was a well-deceived strategic plan from the enemy that did this, and then it was just replicated in the military with broken homes. And then in the military, they're a reflection of society. So when you get, 90s macho men, guns exploding, Arnold Schwarzenegger, commando guys in the 90s, now you're getting man-bunned, skinny jeaned, people in the military now. That's why I joked and said
Is the training different?
Oh, man, it is vastly different. It is vastly, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
What?
Standards continually drop. And
in the military?
I feel like you're joking. I feel like it's sarcasm.
No, all I see is military movies where it's tough and,
Oh yeah, because that sells.
So that's not
That is not
way.
true at all. No, it's constantly. For example, last year or two, I think it was last year, the military still is not making their quota for for recruitment. And the Marine Corps said, and they're like, oh, well, we're making our quota. No, they just lowered the quota that they actually had, and because they weren't making it. So they're like, instead of recruiting, 100,000 this year, we'll say our recruitment quota is 50,000, and they're the only ones who met quota. Regardless, whatever. America, they actually shifted the body fat percentage just to do so. They lowered the medical.
I did hear that.
Yeah, because most of them weren't medically passing. Then they also lowered the mental health ones because, again, people in the 90s, if you guys remember, especially my generation, they're jamming Adderall down in everyone's face. And they're like, oh, your kid can't sit there and be still while you're watching TV all day. And everyone has I hate that word. I think it's two things are the most over analyzed, misdiagnosed thing. First, ADD. Everyone's like, oh, my ADD. I'm like, that's BS. Why? Because you can't stand still through, whatever. That's it's like, and the next one is the A word. I hate it. Anxiety. Everyone has anxiety. It's like, dude, well, you're sitting there drinking a pot of coffee and energy drinks, and just and scrolling through TikTok, and you're just like, it's like, go out and do something. You'll see once you get a healthy 8 hours of sleep, you drink almost a gallon of water a day, you get physical activities daily, you train your mind, you train your body, you eat healthy food, you do the right thing, you listen to God, you'll see how all that stuff just goes away. And Jim Carrey actually says almost something similar. There are people who have these, there are disclaimers who may have, but like, man, weird, like, you can't just go into a large, let's say 100,000 people here and be like 5 people here don't have anxiety. It's just misdiagnosed. It's just over, it's the same with the ADD. It's just, yeah.
So what's the answer? What are we going to do to save masculinity?
Bring Christ back in the household. It's as simple as that. Resiliency and perseverance in marriage. Quit breaking up the nuclear family. Quit bailing out when things get tough. Quit listening to the lies that society has told us. You're better off without him. Oh man, here's a really good one. And I'm going to butcher this one because it's so funny. Like, society keeps taking whatever they want. That's why I said bring Christ back in the household and quit letting schools, whatever camera's on, quit letting schools grow your children and bleed into them. 2 hours a day of parenting will not make up for 9 hours or 8 hours, whatever it is, of your teachers, of liberal teachers, or whatever their personal beliefs are. I don't care if they're right wing or let it. They're bleeding into your children 8 hours a day just to have 2 hours of you coming back from work or a long day and you being half-hearted and low energy and preaching back into your kids. You want to put something in the microwave, give them stuff, let them watch TV, and then they go and you hopefully read them a story before bed, pray, and then you go to bed. That is not going to make up for 8. And then what society's going to do to them? Take control of your family. Own it. So take your kids to church. Take your family. Lead by example. Own up and quit scrolling. Man, if we just replace scrolling with, there's a really good like meme or little video short thing on social media. It says, and it shows a guy said, if we replaced our phone with our Bible, and it just shows him like just walking and like reading the Bible, and it shows him driving the car like reading the Bible. And it was so funny, but at such like hard price because you said because we see this time and time again through generations of where we're at in the world. It's because we fall astray, and we look outward. We look to our phone instead of the throne. So we look for our phones. We're constantly scrolling. We'll look to what society's gonna solve our thing of.
Right.
Oh, my kid has what is the new one? Obedience disorder, something like that. It's another one I recently started hearing, which just means your kid's being bad. And then mixed with he has ADD. It's like, dude, in all of that.
Well, tell me, what kind of parent are you, Dennis? What's your parenting philosophy? Being military and all, I'm curious. Like, are you tough? Are you strict, stern?
It's funny because my wife, she jokes all the time. You'd think so, but like I'm actually like mainly the goofy, singing and dancing with my kids and playing with them. Where my wife is, the whip cracker, is you are not there to be your child's friend. Victor Mark's actually a new friend, a really close guy. He told me something the other day, and I wrote it down.
Good, let's hear it.
It was that good, and I was like, I gotta write this down. So I'll give him kudos for that. If he made it up or not, I heard it from him. It's really good about parenting because I ask him. I always ask.
For those that don't know who Victor Marx is, just give him a quick 411 of who he is.
He's a. I didn't know at the time until we became friends. He's a famous guy who goes out and rescues people. He's a very strong Christian, very strong believer. He does in the name of the Lord, similar to what we do. We recently partnered and became really good friends in fellowship. So he goes out and, similarly to rescue the widows and the orphans. Okay. He has a ministry as well. So we were hanging out the other day, and I stayed a night at his house, and he said, roles without relationship build resentment. Roles without relationship build resentment. But relationship without roles builds defiance.
Relationship without rules or roles?
Rules.
Oh, okay.
My accent.
Relationship without rules.
Relationship without rules builds defiance. So you're not there to be your child's friend. So roles without relationship if you're just the whip cracker the whole time, that builds resentment.
Yeah.
But a relationship without roles builds defiance because you're your child's best friend. You're your child's best buddy that they'll kids they try to get away with things. That's what they are. That's what the human nature is. But you're not there to be their friend. You're there to be their parent and raise good children, successful children in society. So you ask me what kind of father I am. I like to think like a mentor and well-disciplined dad, but very fun, someone they can go to. I'd like to think. So my kids know that I say, what are the 5 keys to success in life? And I say, train your mind, train your body, eat healthy food, do the right thing, and listen to God. If you ask any of my children, I'm like, what are the 5 keys to success? And they'll say that. And you'll grow and go anywhere you can, So if you're training your mind and you're constantly learning forever, not just in school, I'm actually my senior project right now for my master's, and I have a master's cert in counterintelligence and another master's cert in open source intelligence. And after this class, I'm going to pick up more, because I don't remember who said it. It might have been Ben Franklin on this time, not FDR. But he said education is something that you can never finish. And I love that. And I took that.
Sounds like a Ben Franklin.
Yeah. It might have been Thomas Edison. I don't know. But either way, we'll say Ben Franklin.
One of the smart guys.
Yeah. But I love that because education is something you can never finish. And as I grow into this, and then I would say the next one, you can know 1 million books, but if you don't know the one book, then what's this all for? Yeah. And you never graduate
Unfortunately,
the
we have a lot of Bible illiteracy.
I would say then pick up a different version. It's hard to read the King's tongue.
No, but people aren't reading the Bible.
Yeah.
Period.
And that's why we have a society like we do today. Yeah, and when you said, what would you say to parents or what would you say to STEM things? It all resorts back to, boom, that.
Yeah, it is our guidebook.
Yep.
Well, before I let you get out of here, we've mentioned Heroes for Humanity a few times, but I don't think we've really given it the layout, maybe for people to really understand what Heroes for Humanity does and the work you're doing. And it is a nonprofit. Is it just military guys, or who is in Heroes for Humanity? And what work are you carrying out?
Yeah, so Heroes for Humanity, like I said, it's a nonprofit I founded when when I fell and I fully submitted my life to Christ after the Afghan evacs, stood it up for the Ukraine invasion, and then to rescue the widows and orphans and do God's work. So we are formed on the back of Veteran Special Operations, and we use the gifts and talents of the Lord to be His hands and feet. So even though we consist of veteran special operators, we also consist of its veteran special operators, first responders, nurses and medical personnel, and clergymen, and people just trying to do the right thing for the right reason, specifically to make the world a better place. And it falls in our three foundational pillars. So to make the world a better place, what does that mean? Well, we first, because that's a pretty big topic, but we use the gifts and talents to be the Lord's hand and feet. So we share our time, treasure, talent. That's how we give back to the world. And anyone who's listening, that's how you be a part of this.
Could I be a part of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually you guys are. Josh Hicks is one of our local operators. He's been on climbing up and down, scaling mountainsides with me, helping rescue people in North Carolina, and training with us. We're going to Africa together, and vice versa. So we're all partners. In a wise person once told me, in God's economy, everyone wins. So Josh told me you coined that, and I
don't know if I coined it, but that's what I always say.
Yeah.
Somebody that mentored me told me that.
Oh,
that would mean like, if you and I were friends, I would say, oh, man, I'm telling you, I get the most out of the relationship. I am learning the most. You'd say, no, I get the most out of it. That's what they told me then. Each person thinks they're getting the most out of it because in God's economy, everybody wins.
Absolutely. And so with Heroes Many, we partnered with you guys and Josh Hicks specifically, and
which is my son.
Yes, which is her son. And I just saw his heart. And like I say all the time at Heroes Many, when you say, oh, does it just mean military people? Does it mean veterans? I'm like, no, I weigh hearts, not resumes. And I say, I would never stop someone from serving the Lord by a man-made stipulation. Like I said before, I said Moses was called, and he said, you must be my brother Aaron. No, many are called, but few are chosen. And God knows our hearts. He weighs our mind, and he judges us by the fruits that we bear. It doesn't say only veterans or anything like that. He calls those to glorify him. If we were made up of only veterans, everyone's like, of course, they're all special operators. No, we use veterans, special operator veterans, to first responders, medical personnel, paramedics, doctors, nurses, clergymen, and people just trying to do the right thing. So we fall under three main pillars. And so our first pillar is precision personnel rescue. We did it in Afghanistan, we did it in Ukraine, and now we rescue trafficked children locally and globally. Wow. Within the United States, around the world, and we've been extremely successful at it because instead we took the military has spent millions of dollars training me and some of my team to hunt and locate terrorists around the world and eliminate them. All we use is the same skills and technology. Instead of finding and identifying and eliminating terrorists, we find and locate missing children and we rescue them.
Wow.
And sometimes, or majority of the times, it's working with law enforcement and other, nonprofits and NGOs, and so personal precision rescue. And then the next one is Humanitarian Medical Aid. So just like we did in Afghanistan, which would be considered like a humanitarian mission, the Ukraine Humanitarian and Medical Mission, and then we came back to the United States and we do humanitarian aid locally and globally from tornadoes, hurricanes, recent hurricanes in North Carolina, and we also, majority of us are EMTs, special operations medics, paramedics, tons of nurse practitioners, and doctors with us, so we do it globally, humanitarian medical aid. And the third pillar is ultimately evangelism. So people are like, what does that mean? We reach, teach, preach, and disciple. We reach those hard-to-reach souls in those hard-to-reach places. That's what separates us from any other ministry, any other nonprofit. We are able and built, just like what your son, Josh, when we were scaling down mountainsides that no one else could go to because the road broke up 6 miles back, and they're treacherous mountains, and we are having to rappel down mountainsides and take dirt bikes into it, and then having to ruck 100-pound medical equipment in our rucksacks to go and give it to these people because no one else could go to that. So we use our gifts and talents to serve other people in the name of the Lord. So we reach those hard to reach places, just like in Afghanistan, just like in Ukraine, just like in the mountains of North Carolina. We reach those hard to reach places to reach those hard to reach souls. Teach. We teach the world and our operators to everyone around us about Christ and what we do it, and then we lead him there. We preach the word of God, and then we disciple. And because ultimately that's what we're called to do. Jesus calls the disciples, and he says, "Now go be fishers of men, make many disciples amongst many nations." And baptize them in the Father, the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Which we just baptized another person recently, operator with us, John Chase. He was a veteran special operator. Helped us out in North Carolina. I love that story and testimony because he said, I came here to help people, to fulfill something for me. I was looking for something. I came here. I wanted to help. And then not just him, but like 3 other people came to me afterwards and they were like 260-pound jacked, tatted guys, veteran special operators. And they were like bumbling, crying. They were saying that, man, I came here to help for myself, but I left with Christ. And they're like, dude, I saw the way you guys were doing things. I saw the whatever. And what my after action with this, and I was talking to Josh about it, was like, man, I thought I'd be scaling down the mountains and helping and providing medical aid assistance, and leading those people who needed rescue to Christ. And when I went in there, rappelling down, we're here. And I was like, and help them. And when I thought I would lead them to Christ, they were like, no, I've been praying the whole time. And I was like, well, that's why we're here. And those people are praying the whole time because they need help.
Yeah.
But the people to the left and right of me are the most people I was leading to Christ. And I had no clue. It was like God had
He's tricky that way.
A flip at the end of the movie, like Sixth Sense. It's like, oh, Bruce Willis was alive the whole time. For you, the newer generation, that's an old movie, yeah.
Well, so for people that might be interested in Heroes for Humanity, do you have a website?
Yeah, we have a website, and like you mentioned, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that offers tax-deductible benefits. So all our donations are tax-deductible.
But you also do training. If people want to join you, you train them, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we don't send people ill-equipped out there. Gotcha. We send them and we train them. We equip them with the gifts, the skills that we have acquired and that they need. And that is why that I don't care what your resume says, because we're not going and kicking in doors and shooting people. The military actually, I'm like, we have to untrain that out of you. Oh. So I was like, it actually hurts more. I was like, but instead, we're going to teach you medical aid. We're going to teach you discipline. We're going to teach you all these other skills to go in and do it in the name of the Lord. Instead of
heroesforhumanity.org? Or what is
it's the Heroes for Humanity.
The Heroes for Humanity.
Yep, spelling out for as an FOR. For people who need to spell heroes, it's HEROES. theheroesforhumanity.org.
FOUR. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, Dennis, I'm really excited that you came by today. I'm just fascinated by all that you do in your life, and wow, I just feel like I don't get to meet too many heroes. You're really a hero, somebody that would lay down their life to go to Afghanistan to rescue all those people and to be a part of getting 15,000 people out of there. People, you laid down your life for people you didn't even know when you had a wife and kids at home. That's just extraordinary.
So first Christ did already that for us.
I know.
Yeah. And so, and I don't like getting patted on the back like that, cause I lived most of my life not like that. I was pretty discontent the whole time. I would say God is good. He uses people to glorify him. Yeah. It's not what I'm doing. It's what we're all doing, and what God's doing, not just in my life, what he's doing in all of our lives. We just have to be open to hear his voice, and the closer we are with him, the louder his voice is in our life. So I appreciate your kind words. I would say open your Bible, hear the word of God, and implement it in your life, and reach out to us, see what we're doing. We're in 6 different countries this year, doing local operations, national operations, and in 6 different countries all throughout this year. Find out who we are, go on our website, donate to us, share your time, treasure talent, and see how you can be a part of what we are doing and what God is doing, not in my life, not in just our lives, but all of our lives, and be a part of this, because it's ultimately, that's why I love doing this is, I don't even get paid to do, like, I'm the founder and CEO. I don't get paid a single dollar, but, because it's a calling, not a mission. It's a movement, not an organization. It's stand up, do the right thing for the right reason. And it doesn't have to be worth it to do the right thing. There's no return on investment. It's just do the right thing for the right reason. If we only led with our hearts, not with our wallets, where would we be in this world? So.
Well, I think the only way to end, you've said it all great. I think the only thing to say is to God be the glory.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dennis, very much.
Thank you.